Welcome to the pod focusing on the aftermath and recovery from the devastating Palisades fires of January 2025. Journalist Joel Pollack, entrepreneur Oren Ezra, and technology expert Ron Goldschmidt serve up to the moment vital news and information, discuss the ongoing recovery efforts, and introduce us to the individuals and trades who are playing key roles in rebuilding our cherished communities. We're diving into the deep end and learning quickly how we can move forward together. We know the pain because we're living real-time news, stories, resources, and insights on the ongoing recovery effort. Buckle up. We're three homeless guys.
Welcome to Three Homeless Guys, the podcast about the Palisades fire and the rebuilding effort. I'm journalist Joel Pollack with technology expert Ron Goldschmidt and entrepreneur Oren Ezra. And we are pleased to be joined today by a very special guest, Nehama Diskin of the Chabad of Palisades and the Palisades Jewish Early Childhood Center, PJECC, on Los Leones and Sunset. And Nechama, say hi and tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll have a more complete introduction in just a few minutes.
Hi everyone, I'm Nehama Diskin. I was born and raised in the Palisades. My dad and mom are the Chabad rabbi and rebbitzin in the Palisades. So I grew up in the village and then eventually moved to the Highlands. And then after I got married, I moved back with my husband and our family to continue to be a part of the work in Chabad in the Palisades. And we work with the youth and family programming, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so it's been a very eventful week. Firstly, happy Hanukkah. We're taping this on the third day of the holiday of Hanukkah, and hope everyone is enjoying it. A week from tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and I wish everyone a Merry Christmas as well, and a Happy New Year. So it's holiday season, always a very special time in Palisades, and we were at the menorah lighting on Sunday evening. Many people went to the Christmas tree lighting the week before at the Village Mall, where Rick Caruso was present for both festivals. And what a wonderful opportunity both of those events were for bringing people back to the Palisades, bringing people together. Nechama, you have a great video here of that menorah lighting. Do you want to just explain what's happening in this video and who's singing and why?
So the menorah lighting at Palisades Village has been going on since it opened, and actually even before that, from when my parents moved to the Palisades, there's been a menorah lighting every year. It used to be at the corner of Monument at Sunset, and then before the village broke ground, we actually had it by the US Bank, and Mr. Caruso was there, and we've continued that tradition since the Palisades Village has been open. And every year it's always been so beautiful, and it's so nice to partner with the Palisades Village to bring this evening of joy and light. The only year we didn't have it was actually the year of COVID. So 2020 was our year of break. And then after the fire, when we always have our pre-meetings, and it was like, is this going to happen this year? And we were so grateful to Palisades Village and Mr. Caruso for saying, yes, we are going to have this again. And it was just an incredible evening. So many people were there, and the feedback we're getting is incredible. And we're so grateful to have been able to have this evening of joy and light. It was probably the most well-attended event, and it was really, really special. So in the beginning, we had our festivities and fun, and then we had, of course, a ceremony. And it was especially moving because earlier that day, it was kind of like the night before, but really that day, there was the horrific attack in Australia on Bondi Beach, where Chabad rabbis were shot and others were shot in a horrific terrorist attack. And we got the news. I looked at my phone at 5 a.m. and I saw the news, and it was like, what's going to happen? Are people going to even show up? Are people going to be scared? And we right away were in contact with the village to ensure there was proper security. And the security there, they were not kidding. There was full-on security, screenings and everything. You know that this was going to be in place, and people really showed up. So we weren't going to let the darkness stop us. We've been through so much this past year as a community with the fires and everything, and then to have this attack, and people showed up and people came together. And part of the ceremony, we had Cantor Chaim Frankel and Cantor Daniel Leanz from Kehillah Israel. They sang a different song, and one of the songs we asked them was to sing I'm Coming Home, because really coming there, being together was about coming home. So even if we're not there, I mean, personally, I lost my home in the fires, and my home is not actually there, but it is home. So it was really a beautiful moment singing Coming Home together.
Let's play that clip. Just a little taste of things at the menorah lighting, and you can find all kinds of videos of that ceremony on social media, as you can find also videos of the Christmas tree lighting, which was also very exciting. So let's get into a little bit of the news. Nechama mentioned the terror attack in Sydney, Australia on Bondi Beach, which a lot of people are very upset about, and many people actually reached out to me. Ron and Oren, I don't know if you guys had the same experience, but people were reaching out and offering condolences and that sort of thing. My response to these things is just to get through the day and keep going and think about them later, which may be a healthy response, may not be a healthy response, I don't know. But I was grateful people did that. I didn't feel wound up in grief really, but I did feel determined to go to the menorah lighting later. What were your thoughts about the incident when you guys heard about it?
Yeah, to those who haven't been to Bondi Beach, I've been there. The first reaction is actually, viscerally, it kind of reminds me a lot of like where we live, Palisades and Malibu. It's this coastal community with like quite a large Jewish population. It's a very strong community, and it kind of always has reminded me, I've been there a couple of times, it reminded me of like where we live. And so it was immediately struck a chord. Obviously, seeing the videos of the security and what happened there, like actually made me angry because there was no security there. The police, if you've seen the videos, acting on the scene were completely incompetent, did nothing for about 20 minutes while these shooters who were not even that skilled but had like legal weapons from the government were kept on shooting at people, and the police was there, couldn't do anything, didn't do anything, chose not to do anything. We're not trained for this situation. And it made me angry because this kind of incident is entirely preventable, like even when it starts. And if you see like incidents like this in Israel, like the shooters are neutralized within minutes. And it's always somebody on the scene that has a weapon, that is usually from the army or somebody like from the general population that neutralizes somebody like this. And contrast that with the amazing security we actually saw at the Palisades celebration, and it made me angry because I think like the Australian authorities are complicit in this, not just from a security standpoint, but also in the verbiage and what they've been saying over the last couple of years. And the entire community that feels exposed, it particularly hits home to me because I grew up in Canada, and I see a very similar situation over there. Right now I just came from a trip over there, and like everybody in the Jewish community that I spoke to was like making their exit plans to like leave. And it's a very similar situation to that. So I think we have to have a united front. It also made me very strongly want to appear and come to the menorah lighting ceremony in the Palisades, and I know the attendance was amazing. And I just want to throw kudos again to Chabad and Nechama and the entire team there, as well as Mr. Caruso, who backed this event so strongly. Just as it reminded me also, like despite all the differences that we may have with some politicians, like, and we've had issues even with Mr. Caruso on this podcast on some issues. Overall, I think we agree on 99% of stuff. He's extremely a strong leader. This comes on also on the heels of like Karen Bass announcing she's going to be running for re-election. I strongly support. I hope that Rick Caruso runs from there again, because quite frankly, it's shameful that she's running again, and everything that's what happened, and we really need him to run for office in some capacity. So that's my take on what's happened.
Oren, what's your feeling about all of this?
So I think it's all connected, like a lot of things that we've been talking to. One of my best friends moved to Sydney from LA back in 2000. I think it was 17 or 18. And the morning, I didn't hear about it at night. I wake up in the morning and I see what's happening. I give him a call. Usually he's in this event, thanks God. This time his wife had to work, he had a birthday for his son, he didn't go. But I heard some stories about a friend of a friend that had to leave to Israel that day and told him, "Hey, come say hi. I'll meet you over there at the event. I'm there at the event." So the guy went to meet his friend, and there is actually a video that they're both hiding behind a car while one of them is getting shot, and he died. So those things are like, again, to your point, Ron, taking me back to how these things are even happening. What's causing something like this, like so much hatred against Jewish people, against Israelis? And I haven't seen Jews in, in the US or whatever, going to a pro-Palestine event and starting to hit people or starting to shoot at people. And I think we've been run by, TikTokers and by a lot of money. People's opinion have been changed. It's very hard, and it's going now to my point, it's very hard to understand what the truth is anymore. Really, really hard. Like you can go on TikTok and we'll take two brand new TikTok accounts, and one of them will start like writing stuff like I'm a pro-Palestinian and I'm going to get one kind of content. On the other one, I'm going to start writing down things about like I'm a pro-Israel. I'm going to get a different set of content. Basically two different total realities. And I want to connect it back to us, to where we live, and what's happening over here. I believe there is like two totally different realities. One is our reality. One reality, whole reality, your reality, Nechama. I know that you lost your home. I know that you guys lost a lot of buildings on the Chabad on the PCH over there. And our reality is totally different from the reality of what Gavin Newsom is trying to paint, and of what Bas is trying to paint, and a lot of politicians. And I think that over here, there is only like one very simple truth. These people didn't do what they should have done. Same like in Australia, didn't do what they should have done when people are starting chanting death to Jews and stuff like this. These things should have been stopped immediately. When you don't do what you're supposed to do, then God forbid something like what happened in Sydney happened, something like what happened over here in January 7 is happening. And I think that the truth, and maybe Nechama, you can speak about it a little bit from a spiritual perspective after that. I think that the truth is something that it's not binary anymore, and we need to somehow understand how do we get the truth.
Well, that's obviously not something I know anything about, because I'm just a journalist and we don't really deal in truth. We had a dog barking in the background, and I just want to ask everyone to mute their mics when they're not talking, because we do get interruptions sometimes from pets and babies and things like that, who are all wonderful, but they distract the listener. All right, let's talk a little bit about a couple other pieces of news. I want to just flag something for everyone, and that is that there is a deadline coming up. We all know about January 7th, but there is also a deadline for a special program most people may not know about, and it is actually a pair of programs with the Federal Housing Administration. And the FHA, which is part of HUD, offers a couple of different programs that will help people rebuild their homes under certain circumstances, and only up to certain limited amounts. So I don't want to exaggerate or overstate the case, but I do want to make sure that people know it's available. And we are going to be talking to someone, I hope, in the next few weeks that is an expert about this and can give us information about it. But one of the programs is called a K Rehabilitation Mortgage Insurance Program. And what it does is it insures your mortgage for refinancing and rehabbing a home. So there's that one. And then there's another kind of program also with the FHA. And I think, I'm just going to double check here because these numbers get very confusing, but it's called the 3 program. And that's also a mortgage insurance program that helps victims of a presidentially declared major disaster area purchase a home or rebuild their damaged one. So 3 and K, these are mortgage and loan insurance programs. So the government's not giving people money, but it is providing insurance to lenders so that it's easier for you to get money from a bank that lends for this kind of loan. What kind of loans are we talking about? So again, the first one I mentioned, the 203K, is for rehabbing or refinancing an existing home. And 203 is specially for people in disaster areas so they can rebuild or purchase a home. And there are limits. And I hear people taking notes, which is good. We just want to mute our mics so that the keyboard doesn't sound on the computer. The two programs, 203H and 203K, they have a deadline. They have a deadline of the date of the declaration of the presidential disaster. And that deadline is January 8th. So if you want to take advantage of this program, the FHA 203H or 203K, you have to have the application in. It doesn't have to be approved by the 8th, but you have to start the process by the 8th. And we are going to try to get you information about how to do this. But if you want to look it up, you can go to hud.gov, HUD.gov, and look up 203H or 203K. Or maybe we can put that in the show notes as well. 203H and 203K. A couple of caveats here about that. Number one, there are loans available only up to particular amounts. And being that the Palisades has some more expensive homes and some higher construction costs, it's probably not going to cover the full cost of rebuilding or refinancing. So it probably won't cover your full cost. The other issue is that it's my understanding that if you already have a mortgage that you're paying, I don't think these loans are available to you because the new lender is not going to want to be in a secondary position relative to your first lender. But for those who owned their homes outright, or in the case I think of the 203, if you were renting and now want to buy a home, so you don't have a mortgage, just paid rent before, you're good for these loans. You can apply for these loans, or I should say this form of loan insurance. And we're going to try to clarify all this before the end of the year so that you can get the applications in. But we'll have those in the notes. Again, the programs are 203H and 203K with the Federal Housing Administration. And this has flown under the radar a bit. People have heard about the SBA loans, about FEMA, about other kinds of assistance, private, public. But there is this form of assistance from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I think people didn't really notice it because we think of HUD as dealing with public housing or affordable housing, quote unquote, for lower income families. But there are actually loans available for people in our situation, provided you meet those conditions. And again, it's up to, I think, a maximum of 1.2 million. So it's not going to cover the full loss for many people in the Palisades, and it's not going to cover the full cost of rebuilding, but it could help. And if you need an extra loan, if you have some cash from insurance and you need a loan to cover the gap, this could cover the gap potentially. I don't want to get ahead of what the FHA is actually going to say, but it's my understanding that this could help. It's not going to help everybody, but it could help at least a few people in the Palisades. So again, the deadline is January 8th to start the application. You don't have to be all finished and approved by January 8th, but you have to get in there. So it's hud.gov, and we'll put the links right in the show notes. We can do that? Okay, good.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, couple other things, some serious and some fun. So on the subject of Hanukkah and holiday parties, or maybe you can pull the picture up, my wife Julia and I were lucky enough to go to the White House Hanukkah party. They actually had two parties. They had one at 3 o'clock and one at 7 o'clock. That's the kind of two-party system I like. I'm in favor of a two-party system, one in the afternoon, one in the evening. But we went to the White House Hanukkah party, and it was great fun. By the way, the decor in the White House is entirely about Christmas. So they had the Hanukkah reception in this beautiful room with gold drapery and beautiful chandeliers and wonderful Christmas trees. It was kind of an ecumenical celebration, you could say. Everything was done properly and according to Jewish law and custom, and it was very beautiful. And my friend from law school, Will Scharf, who's the president's staff secretary, he chanted the blessings, and that was very, very nice. And the president said, "Gee, well, I didn't know you were that Jewish," which was very funny. The president is very funny, whatever you think of him. He told a lot of great jokes off the cuff. There's the picture of me and my wife at the White House. That's in the East Wing of the White House. It's not being demolished. The East Wing is or sorry, the East Room is not being demolished. The East Wing is being demolished. Sorry. See how easy it is to get confused between the two? A lot of people have been to this East Room or whatever facility this is. It's next to the part that's being demolished, which is the East Wing. And one of the reasons they had two parties is that the White House simply doesn't have the space to entertain people, especially with the construction going on. It didn't have much space before. Now it has even less. But when the ballroom is finished, $400 million ballroom, then there will be space for lots of people in lots of parties. And it was a lot of fun. Not as much fun as our Palisades menorah lighting, but still a lot of fun and quite a highlight of the week. Of course, everyone is thinking about Sydney and Australia, and the president mentioned that, and I think people have generally been very decent about it. Another item relative to the Palisades, relating to the Palisades, is the LA Department of Water and Power has decided to move what they call the UROC, which stands for something or other related to rebuilding. But basically, it's supposed to be a one-stop shop for finding answers to questions and getting help with infrastructure issues relative to rebuilding. They've moved that to the lot on Marquez, which is next to the Marquez Charter Elementary School, and it's also next to my house. So I've now got this monstrosity on the LADWP lot next to my house. And those of you in the Marquez Knolls neighborhood, if you're around, you will have noticed that the LADWP has moved onto that lot. And they did so without any notice, zero notification. They simply backed some trucks onto their lot, dumped a bunch of dirt, graded it, and then put up 4 prefab trailers with some concrete guardrails at the bottom, supposedly to prevent erosion, and a few pipes, I guess, for drainage. And they're just going to be there. So I suppose that's good if you need a place to go. It used to be at the bottom of Topanga Canyon, Topanga and PCH, but it moved now into Pacific Palisades proper. And it did so, again, without any consultation with the neighbors. So I'm very glad that there's a place to go to have these questions answered, that LADWP is committing to rebuild the infrastructure. But I am very upset at the way they did this, especially because they know there are property owners next to their property. And if you or I, Ron and Oren, if we tried to do what they're doing, if we did it on our property, we'd have inspectors all over us. We'd have fines and lawsuits and maybe even prosecutions, depending on whether we killed an endangered flower or whatever. This is really appalling because I think it's symbolic of the way that LADWP has treated the public since the fire. You know, I went to the LADWP site after the fire, and I was met by a official from LADWP who told me, oh yeah, we're going to put the substation in that we've wanted to put in for a long time because nobody's around to notice. He actually said that to me. And that's been their approach, their attitude the whole time. It has been, we're just going to do what we want because nobody's here. But I think they're actually violating the law. You know, under California law, you have to file an environmental impact statement if you do something like that. They haven't filed anything. Even if all you say is, we're not going to have an environmental impact, you have to say something. So watch this space. We're going to have some kind of a dialogue with LADWP to try to figure this out. But, you know, we want to come back to neighborhoods that are better than the ones that unfortunately burnt down. They were very beautiful before, but we want to make them even more beautiful. And having 4 prefab trailers blocking the view of the mountains is not my idea of an improved neighborhood, nor anyone else's. That's one of the nicest views in Palisades. It should be a park, actually. But LADWP has decided they're going to behave the way they want to, whether it's legal or not, and whether the neighbors care or not. Well, we're not going to stand for that. So we are organizing, and to their credit, LADWP did respond to me, and they've promised to try to work things out. So we're going to see where that goes, but stay tuned to that. And then finally, just another Palisades tragedy. We've all been following the news about Rob Reiner and the horrific murder. Rob Reiner and his wife murdered on the weekend. And there's a whole Palisades angle to it, which is that their son, who's the accused murderer, was with his parents at a holiday party at Conan O'Brien's house in the Palisades the night of the alleged murders. So people have been curious about the Palisades once more. I actually had something of a fleeting connection with Rob Reiner because I used to have an office next to his office, believe it or not. my office was next door to his, and I used to see him in the men's room all the time. Not that we worked for the same company, but we just happened to be in the same building. And I spoke to him every once in a while, and he was an extremely kind and gentle and completely closed-minded person. I mean, so, he's one of the people that you meet, and we all have these people in our lives who are actually warm and wonderful people, and you can talk to them, but they're absolutely immovable on any issue, and there's no compromise on anything. So he was a curious balance, completely uncompromising on his views and not really good at listening to the other side, but extremely polite, helpful, kind. So really just a terrible loss. I mean, he was one of the great American filmmakers, and we're also grieving him and his wife, and of course the shattered family, which will never be the same, and a lot of sadness to get through. And now we're looking at the 1-year anniversary of the fire, and a lot of hope at these menorah lightings and Christmas and so forth, but a lot of sadness. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about that before we really open our conversation with Nechama, but a lot of news to get through this week. And that really was one of the more bizarre, sad, and just terrible lingering stories.
Yeah, I honestly, Joel, I for one can't wait for this year to be done. It's been a year of a lot of ups and downs, but mostly downs. And I think we've said that, for the last few years, because we had October 7, which started a difficult year. And this year was not easier, to say the least. So I'm looking forward to January 1st, 26. Chama, I know you're going to say that everything is for a reason, right? I can hear you. I can hear your voice. But let's start the year next year with the purpose to having all of this happen for a reason. And I want to emerge stronger, and I think the community wants to emerge stronger. I think it's showing signs of that. There's a lot of also amazing things that happened this year, and I know this is not a year in review, but it's been a difficult year, and I can't wait to see what positive things come out of all of this.
So with that, let's throw it to Nechama. Nechama, tell us about your experience of the fire and what happened. We know about your home, the condo, the building you lived in burnt down. Tell us about the Chabad campus. First of all, where it is, what Chabad is, what it does for the community, and then what happened during the fire.
So Chabad is an international organization which is all over the world. They say wherever you find a Starbucks, you can find a Chabad, but really Chabad is everywhere. And the mission is to spread the light of Judaism to Jews and non-Jews alike, and just be a space where people feel safe and comfortable and just sharing light. Chabad in the Palisades is by Sunset and Los Leones. We moved to that location in 2011. Before that, we were in the village, right on top of where Chipotle is. And we've been in the Palisades for over 30 years. On January 7th, that was the second day back from winter break in the preschool. And actually it was our first day back at Hebrew school. And I happened to be getting some hot chocolate for the kids for a little treat. Welcome back. And as I'm driving back, my husband calls me and says, looks like we have to evacuate. And back at the site, we were actually right next door to the fire station. And when there started being smoke, the director went across the street and asked the firefighters, hey, do you have to evacuate? And they said, no, we don't have to evacuate. But she made a decision that, it doesn't seem good. We should really evacuate. And those split-minute decision of letting the parents know that they had to evacuate really helped a lot of people avoid all the congestion. I mean, there were some parents that did get stuck, but we really were spared because of evacuating before the evacuation, official evacuation notice went out. And then, so we evacuated the kids, and I'm sure most of you have seen the videos that were on TV of the menorahs on fire. The storage went on fire on January 7th, probably around 3-4 o'clock. I may be messing up the time, but around then, honestly, I had no idea what was going on at the Chabad, what was intact, what wasn't. So those famous pictures, all the storage at the end of the parking lot went on fire on that day. And then we started getting news from lots of members in the community that people were losing their homes, had lost their homes, and it was really hard and dark day. And then miraculously, the main building on the campus survived, that has the offices and the infant center, but a couple of the classrooms burned as well as the kitchen. They actually did not burn on the first day. They were standing, but we believe it burnt the next day. Yeah, so that was kind of wild. And since then, we've just been, even although we're not fully on the campus, the preschool is now in Santa Monica. We were back there for the high holidays, so there's been remediation. We did different work to make the place usable and open and welcome, and just to be a space that people can come together. Actually, this Shabbat, we're having a big Shabbat dinner there. And yeah, just kind of giving that space for people to come together. So as I said, our preschool is now in Santa Monica, our Hebrew school is in Santa Monica, our friendship circle has been operating out of Santa Monica, as well as the teen programming. But really the message of Chabad is to spread light and spread joy. And actually, after the horrific attack on Sunday, we, of course, said we have to spread even more light. We can't let these cowards and terrorists scare us into hiding away and not celebrating joy and celebrating light. And I feel they actually chose Australia as a place because that was the first place where you celebrate Hanukkah. So that would instill fear around the world, saying, hey, don't go to menorah lightings because there may be an attack. But actually the rabbi that was shot, after October 7th, he said that we need to celebrate our Judaism louder and stronger and not be afraid and be more Jewish, look more Jewish. And really that is the message of not letting darkness stop us. And that's kind of the message also with the fire. The fire really put a lot of things in perspective. Kind of everything I knew. I mean, as I said, I grew up in the Palisades, is not there, and driving through can be hard. But seeing the little pockets of hope, the houses going up, and again, Sunday was amazing. Just seeing the community come together was really something special.
So regarding the Chabad campus, the synagogue survived, and the main offices survived, the preschool, which I think is inside the main building, survived. And then the mikveh survived. The mikveh is kind of like a spa, if I can describe it that way, which is used for ritual purposes. That survived. But the classrooms outside on the perimeter of the property were all burnt down. And that schoolyard was destroyed. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the infant center, which is in the main building, survived, and then 3 out of the 6 classrooms survived. But 3 of the classrooms burned along with the kitchen. And actually that day, I don't know if you remember, it was super windy. They say unprecedented winds, but there's always been the Santa Ana winds in that time of year. And we had these sails that were for shade above the yard.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Thank God the maintenance, my dad, Rabbi Zushi, asked the maintenance to please take down those sails because with that wind, they would anyways fall down. But miraculously, they were taken down because the fire was on the yards, and had they hit those sails, it would go straight up to the office building. So it really was miraculous. And you see there and you see the miracle of that structure survived. And we kind of look at it as a sign that we need to be here, and we need to continue being a place where people can find light and find hope. And yeah, it's humbling.
That's amazing.
Part of it, and just, yeah.
It's amazing. Both synagogues in Palisades survived. Many churches survived, some did not. And the Presbyterian Church, where I used to vote, that burnt down. Corpus Christi burnt down. In fact, the firefighters asked me to try to contact the priest because they were worried that some of the holy items had been left there. It turned out they had been evacuated to Santa Monica, so they were safe. Lots of religious buildings didn't make it. And of course, the homes of some of the members of the clergy didn't make it. In your family, you had relatives whose homes survived, relatives whose homes were damaged or threatened, and then, of course, your home. What's that like when you're part of the same family and your relatives have homes or don't have homes? Does that change the dynamic in the family at all?
So it's actually funny because, not funny, but it was kind of an eye-opening experience for my husband. Obviously no one slept that night, January 7th, and we were getting all the news of this person found out their house was burned and this one and this one. At that point, we didn't know that our house was burnt. And my husband was calling different people, I'm so sorry, and just, I'm here. And then when the news came that our house was gone, it was yeah, you're calling everyone, but when it happens to you, it's a real check, but It's hard that we don't have our home, and it's hard that we're so far because we are working out of the Palisades a lot. And there's a lot of commute. We're in West Hollywood now. But the fact that my parents have their home and they're able to remediate it, I actually view it as like really, it's comforting because I have that space to go back and to be there and spend Shabbats together. And it's a miracle that it survived. And I mean, also behind them, everything is burnt. But it's
And they had a water main break on the hill behind them, and they had a landslide.
Yeah.
So it's not just a fire, it's all this other stuff going on because of the fire that you have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, you remember those rains.
Yeah, the rains
right
came.
after,
Well, there was the water main after the fire, and then there were the rains. So the water main broke on Castellamare, and then there was a landslide behind your parents' house. I think the retaining wall belonging to the neighbor tipped over like at a 45-degree angle. And then
Crazy.
there were the rains, and it was just a giant mud bath everywhere.
Yeah,
Really,
so much work to get it back to what it was.
Yeah.
Actually, the staircase in the back kind of held up the mountain, ironically, crazy.
Yeah. Yet you guys made it through it all. My daughter was a student at the preschool that burnt down, but she had moved for the sake of convenience to the Chabad preschool in Santa Monica, which was and is 2 or 3 blocks away from where my wife used to work. But for months, 4-year-old, that 3-year-old, now 4-year-old, was haunted by the knowledge that her previous school had burnt down. And she would say almost every day, my old school burnt down, but my new school didn't burn down. But my old school burnt down, but my new school didn't burn down. Just going over it over and over and over. And when one member of your family, I think it was your brother, was he delivering the gifts on Purim, the traditional,
Could be.
Mishloach Manot, it's tradition on the Jewish holiday of Purim, which happens in February or March, to give gifts to friends. She was still thinking about the fire so much. He came to our temporary house in Pico Robertson with a little plate of goodies, and she saw him at the door, and she said, "Have you come to fix our fence? Our fence burned down." She's just like this rabbi shows up, and she's like, "Are you here to fix the fence?" I mean, kids, it's hard on the kids. I mean, what has the reaction been in the school community, and how have the children reacted now that you're seeing them again every day? What do you get from them about the fire?
So it's hard, we ran the summer camp in the summer. Again, we didn't know what it would be because usually we're in the Palisades and then you have everyone living in the Palisades, but now people are not living in the Palisades. So do we open camp? And of course, the message of Chabad is to just keep going and keep spreading light. So it doesn't matter if we'll have our regular enrollment or less, we have to be there for the families, for the community. So parents actually told me that this was their first time. The kids had really been traumatized. I mean, you know how it was with Marquez and the different schools of getting the kids out, and their kids would have separation anxiety when they would go to school since the fire, and then coming to camp and having that safe space really did so much for their kids. And it's been rough. It's been rough on the kids. I mean, even my own kids, they're like, "Oh, you remember that? Remember that toy? You remember that our menorah?" Now with Hanukkah, we actually tried looking for our menorah amongst the rubble, didn't come up. But my kids do talk about it. Remember our old house? I miss our neighbors. I miss.
You know what's crazy? I mean, my house is still standing for the most part. It's mildly damaged, but still there. But the Hanukkah decorations from last year are still on our windows. I mean, my kids put up these little Maccabee stickers and dreidels, and they're still there.
It's like frozen in time.
I know. It's like, well, we don't have to take them down and put them back up again. They're still there. Yeah, and a lot of people still had Christmas decorations up. I mean, just driving around the neighborhood before people were able to come back in and clear the debris, there were so many Santas and candy canes. And, the holiday season was still just in its last day or so. And I guess the 12th day of Christmas is usually January 6th, right? And the fire was January 7th. Most people were going to take their Christmas decorations down that day or the day after. And anyway, just to a point Oren and Ron were making earlier, anti-Semitism and the threat. Palisades is an extremely tolerant community and always has been. And a lot of us have learned more about the history of Pacific Palisades since the fire. And I didn't actually know this before the fire, but there were many refugees from Nazi-occupied Europe who found their way to California and who actually settled in Pacific Palisades, because at that time, the United States wasn't letting in most immigrants or even most Jewish refugees, but there were high-profile professors and artists and writers who were able to get out on special visas or were brought over especially by the Roosevelt administration. And so many of them settled in Santa Monica and in Palisades. And they joined this community that had been established in the early 20th century. And it just became one of the most tolerant places, not just in California, but in America. And that's part of our legacy. So there is a history of standing together against hatred and bigotry and all kinds of things. And I see your screen is frozen, so we'll hopefully
I was just going to say, Joel, that we saw a lot of that come together last week at the menorah lighting, where I saw so many friends, both Jewish and non-Jewish, that came to the event and that we haven't seen in a long time. There was something special about seeing everybody together in those streets. And, my understanding, there was like some generators brought in because there's no electricity, to light up enough of the event. But seeing that event take place in a place with an event that I saw from many previous years was really something. And also to have that attendance. Nechama, how did that event, feel for you?
It was honestly really humbling. I'm still can't process that it actually happened, because we really didn't know what it was going to be, you're putting on an event. People don't live there. I mean, there are a few people that live there, but barely anyone lives there. So to come out, and usually we do the menorah lighting not on a Sunday, because Sunday there was farmer's market. So it'd be just a regular day. So when we were originally planning the event, like, hey, let's do it. Why don't we do it Thursday night? And I said, listen, people don't live here. We have to do a Sunday, and make it easy for people to come. And then even the timing is what time, and even usually people would go out to dinner, or they have food at the village, or they would have food at their house for dinner. So again, we were able to have food for people to have for dinner, and just to have to see everyone come together in light, and people were happy. One mom said that her kid came, it was her first time back at Palisades Village, and she's like, I want to kiss the floor. I'm so happy to be here, and another mom texted me about how they had heard the news from Australia, and her kid said they want to come because it feels warm and cozy to be by menorah lighting. So just be able to have that source of light and strength, and seeing the community together from all backgrounds, and just putting our differences aside to unite with light. And that's really the message, because we can all be the light. When we see this world is so dark, and when you're in a dark room, all it takes is one candle to light another candle. When you do one act of kindness, and it can inspire another person to do more kindness. And teaching our children, yes, there's hate. Yes, we need to be vigilant. I mean, my husband wears a kippah out. My son wears a kippah out. And am I scared? I don't know if the word is scared, but I have to be aware when I'm walking around, be aware of my surroundings. But again, teach our kids, yes, there could be bad people in this world. And at the same time, it's our job to be the light and to spread the light. I actually just watched a clip from a Chabad Rebbitzin in Australia, who was actually at the event at Bondi Beach. And she had said that after October 7th, they had a menorah on their front lawn. They were obviously shaken and traumatized after the event. They came home, and her kids said, Mommy, Daddy, please turn off the menorah, take the menorah down. And they were telling them, no, it's light, we want to be light. And they said, no, we're scared, we don't want to be targets. If we have the menorah, we don't want to be a target. So the mom said, as your mother, we're going to turn it off, because if this is how you feel, I'm going to turn it off. And they obviously went to bed, kind of sad about it, and really. And the next day they had a Christian neighbor who said, I have to tell you, we were driving by and my daughter started crying. She said they turned the menorah off, and they're trying to take away the light. And so they told the story to their kids, and the menorah went back on. And that's the message. We can't let the darkness stop us. We have to share the light. And that's the message of the Rebbe. The Rebbe was the kind of the visionary behind Chabad. Is the visionary behind Chabad, and he sent out emissaries throughout the world to represent this message of spreading light, spreading goodness. So I'm happy and proud, privileged to be part of this mission of light.
I think about your family and how the Chabad Rebbes or rabbis are assigned their mission. When the Rebbe was alive, he would say, okay, this young couple is going to this remote place and setting up a home and a synagogue, and you're going to be in that community the rest of your lives. And that's still how it works, even after the Rebbe's passing more than 30 years ago. Chabad sends these young emissaries out, and I suppose it's normal for people to think, well, I'd like to be in a community that's closer to my family, or maybe I'd like to be in a community that's a little more affluent, or I'd like to be in a community that already has a large Jewish population that's very involved, because then my job is easier as I'm trying to recruit people to come to the congregation and join in our activities. And in a way, being assigned to the Palisades is kind of a plum assignment, because it's a beautiful community. It's near a large urban Jewish community. You can get kosher food. You can participate in the broader community. And it's a fairly wealthy community, so there will be donors to help with the synagogue funds and the school funds and the preschool and everything like that. And then this tragedy happens, this massive natural disaster. And now, instead of community set up in an affluent part of Los Angeles, now you have a completely new mission, which is keep the community going in a place that has to be rebuilt almost from scratch over a generation, really. And it's just a completely different assignment. How do you feel about that? How do your parents feel about it? How does your family feel about its mission as it's changed so much, really?
I mean, that's a really good question, and we kind of ask ourselves that every day. It's not easy. If I would say I'm walking around happy every single day, and that would be lying. It's very hard to see everything you work so hard. I mean, my parents came here and they started in a small community meeting room, which was then, I think it was called Glendale Federal Bank, which is where Citibank was. And then they eventually moved to the storefront atop of Chipotle and slowly grew bigger and bigger. So they've, over 30 years, building this community, and then one day everything changes. It's a lot. It's very hard. At the same time, we're driven with the power of the Rebbe and the inspiration of the Rebbe that we don't stop. This has happened in other places too. I mean, I have a friend that reached out right after the fires. She was from Ukraine, Kiev. And once the war broke out, everything was not as it was. Her husband goes back and forth, and she's now in France. Kind of our mission has shifted, and I have friends like, wow, so much is going on in the Palisades. Is everyone back? I'm like, no, this place is burnt down. Like, it's going to take time for it to get back. I mean, they, Instagram versus reality, they see this big menorah lighting. Wow, the community is here and everything. And I have to just remind them, no, it takes time to build homes, and especially fighting insurance and everything. And there's all the people that are not coming back. But we view our mission now is to be there, to have these events that people could come out to. And then, of course, people that have moved, to connect them with Chabads in their new locations. And things are different. And at the same time, our core value of being there for the community hasn't changed. But again, it's not always easy. But we're grateful for supporters and people that see what the mission is. And that's kind of where it's at.
Yeah, you and your family have done an amazing, incredible job, and I can speak firsthand. So many things that you guys are doing. Nechama, I was hoping you could maybe, I've seen over the years like how supportive Rick Caruso has been of the community, not just because of the village, even before that. And, he really had some strong words this past week and was very present there with his entire family. Speak about like the connection with Caruso and the Palisades.
Yeah, so Mr. Caruso is a really dear friend. I mean, as you see from the menorah lettings, but it actually started before that, when the village was getting planned. I forget what year it was, and Mr. Caruso had bought multiple properties to create the village. He actually allowed us to use one of the spaces for a synagogue in the village. When we got our location at Sunset and Las Leonas, he allowed us to use the space, I think it was the US Bank, while it was going through the permitting and all that type of stuff. And he's really been a friend throughout the years, and just after October 7th. And every year he's been so supportive by the menorah lightings, and he really is a leader, and a real mensch. He's not Jewish, and at the same time, he really stands with the Jewish community and stands with the Palisades community. He doesn't have to, He could just say, yeah, that's my property and that's it. But he chooses to be involved. He chooses to be a strong voice. And we're really lucky to have him as part of the community. I actually was telling the organizers that I work together with how this menorah lighting it really gave hope to a lot of people. And just the fact that the Palisades Village is standing, if there was not the Palisades Village, I mean, I think it'll be even harder to come back. The fact that there's going to be in August, it's going to open, there's going to be people that do have standing homes. If they come back to nothing, that's very hard. But the fact that there will be a space for people to come and go out and hang out and go out to eat it's a really big deal. And we have to really be grateful to Mr. Caruso for his steadfast support to the community. And he's a real mensch and a real friend. We're grateful for him, really.
Yeah, the fact that the village is standing is not an accident. He was the water commissioner for Los Angeles in the 90s, very young. I think he was still in his 20s at that point. And he knew that the city had water problems, so he had his own water supply and he had his own private firefighters. And that's a big part of the story. I could have mentioned this in the news portion, but there's a researcher at UCLA who's come out with a study in which he claims that having water in the hydrants during a wildfire isn't a thing. It doesn't happen. That the experience of running out of water from the fire hydrants is pretty common in wildfires. And when Cal Matters, which is a centrist political policy blog, wrote up that study, they wrote it up as if the questions about the reservoir in Palisades didn't matter. It doesn't matter if we didn't have 117 million gallons of water available because the fire hydrants run dry in every fire. Except that's not the only thing you use a reservoir for. The helicopters dip their buckets in a reservoir and tankers can fill from a reservoir. And Caruso had tankers. He had water tankers filling up from the public water system and protecting his property. And I don't think it's helpful to say that not having water in the reservoir wasn't important. Of course it was important. The issue with the hydrants has to do with water pressure, and that is true. And one of the things I've been trying to do is to argue for a decentralized water system where we can have tanks in different neighborhoods so that we don't have this generalized pressure problem in the event of a wildfire. We need to redesign the system. So there's a system flaw, but there's also a basic problem of competence. And the fact that the Village Mall still stands is proof that
Joel,
it could have been saved. Proof that more could have been saved.
I just want to cut you over here, Joel, because as you've seen on Sunday when we met in Sunset Mesa had like 2 huge water tanks that were empty. So I don't even think that it's about the system. The system is there. The problem is that if the people that are running the system are incompetent and they're not taking care of it, what is it going to help us? Or if if the firefighters need to fight the fire on January 1st and need to take down everything to make sure there is no burning, nothing is burning underneath the ground, and they haven't done it, what would more water help? It's like, I think that's the main issue that we're facing over here.
Yeah, well, we're very grateful that the village still exists, but it is a sign and evidence really that given enough water and enough personnel, enough resources, more could have been saved, even with the hurricane force winds and so forth. I mean, yes, those winds were serious. And Nechama, you mentioned that your dad and the maintenance crew at the synagogue took down the sails. I took down the flag on my home because it had snapped in previous Santa Ana winds. And I took down my son's pitching net where he used to throw baseballs to practice because it always blows over in high winds. And so we were preparing, but the city wasn't prepared. They didn't pre-deploy the firefighters where they needed to be, and the mayor was out of town. We've been over all that, but the ordinary common sense preparation that you did and that we did and other people did somehow did not happen at a city level. And that is something we need to be asking about. We need to ask all the candidates, including Mayor Bass, but also the other candidates. And by the way, on the topic of the mayor and the re-election race, someone sent this to me just a short while ago, right before we went on the air, or right before we sat down to tape. Karen Bass gave an interview to a podcast, I guess very much like this one. And she thought the podcast was over and they were still recording. And she made a comment which was, quote, "Both sides botched it," meaning the city and the county. And people are very curious as to what she meant by both sides botched it. And apparently there are several minutes now that were recorded, but that have ended up on the cutting room floor at the mayor's request. There's some understanding that it did not do a good job. And, the candidates, the mayor and all the challengers, and hopefully there'll be more of them, they need to be asked what they would do differently. I think that's just a crucial question, because if we haven't learned as a city, then I don't know what hope there is. We have to learn. We have to improve, no matter who's in office.
Correct. Yeah, 100%.
So, Nechama, last question for you. You've been very generous with your time. What are you seeing the community come back, and what does that look like? What does it feel like to you? I know you're having to spread all the operations out over West Hollywood and Santa Monica, but many things still manage to take place in the Palisades with the community. Are you seeing people coming back, and when do you think the community will be large enough back in the Palisades where it starts to feel like home again?
So people are coming back again. The high holidays were in the Palisades, and we were so kind of pleasantly surprised and really happy to see how many people showed up for the high holidays. And we had a Sukkot dinner also in the Palisades, with close to 200 people there. And people really are showing up to events. I mean, you saw by the menorah lighting, obviously. Obviously, there are people that are not. They don't live here anymore, so they can't be there. Living here means on the west side, drivable, not in Redondo Beach is pretty far, Calabasas is pretty far too, but people that could come out are coming out, and it's not necessarily on a consistent basis. It's more of when there's a holiday, when there's an event. When I think it's going to come back, it's hard to know, there's the people that are going to be making their way back once they are done with the remediation. So I think there's going to be different waves of people coming back, the waves of people coming back after remediation, and there's going to be the people that are rebuilding when their homes are done. But to come back to what it was, I feel like it's going to be a couple years, but that's not going to stop us. We're going to keep having the programs, having the events, and having the space for people to come together. At this point, I feel there's really small percentage of people actually living in the Palisades, but it doesn't mean they're not coming to programs and events.
Well, we hope that people will be able to move back in. I told my wife this past year, it felt like everything was happening to us, and this next year, I want to feel like we are starting to take the initiative and to take control of our situation. The Chabad is a really important part of doing that. And the light that you spread and the hope that you spread and the positivity is really, really important. And that's true of all the religious communities that are sticking around and helping out. And there's so much good that's happening this time of year. I just got a text message while we were speaking about something happening. Vittorio's, the Italian restaurant in Marquez Knolls, which just celebrated its 40th anniversary right before the fire. They're having a Christmas party for inner city kids, underprivileged inner city kids. They do it every year. They're going to do it at the Golden Bull, which is a restaurant in Santa Monica on West Channel Road. You've all driven by it hundreds of times. It's going to be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday, the 20th of December. So people are continuing the traditions of giving, even though people have lost so much. And that's just been incredible. Many of us in the Palisades have given charity for most of our lives. Now we've had to be recipients of charity in different ways, and it's humbling, but it's also a reminder that that's why we do it. We do it because we're all in this together, and we may be fortunate for a while. We may need help also at some point in our lives, and nobody really stays in that position forever. It cycles through. So Chabad has really taught us that. I think, you've just done so much to help. And I'm wearing a winter coat here in DC that was donated because it's my winter coat was smoke damaged, could not wear it anymore. And I picked it up at a Chabad in Malibu. I was with the Israeli firefighters writing a story about their help in the wildfire. And I saw this coat and I thought, someone probably needs that more than me. But if I come back in the evening and it's still there, I'm taking it. It was still there in the evening, so I took it. That's what I'm wearing here in sub-zero temperatures in Washington, D.C. So, we've all had to be givers and then receivers.
Yeah, it was quite humbling to be on the receiving end when you're always giving. But even after the fire, so it was really inspiring to see Chabads from all over the world came together to send things to families that were affected. New bikes and toys and sweaters and gift cards, and really just, we're a community, and it doesn't matter what divides us, being there to give to each other and, just always try to be on the giving end. And then if you have to receive. But in this holiday season, everyone should be blessed with good things. Revealed good. We're ready for good things.
Yeah. It's just wonderful how people continue to give. So thanks to all who continue to make this Hanukkah and Christmas season so meaningful. And we'll have more to say about the 1-year anniversary soon, but I guess we just want to wish everyone a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, very safe and happy holiday season. And if you want to visit our episodes, now we've been around for almost a year. It's incredible. 3homelessguys.com. You can email us at pod@3homelessguys.com. Please like and subscribe at our YouTube channel. And stay tuned. We're only going to get bigger and better from here. We are going to have an anniversary event, so stay tuned for more information about that. For now, for myself, Joel Pollack, for Oren Ezra and Ron Goldschmidt, we're saying so long from the Three Homeless Guys, and stay strong.
Thanks for listening to Three Homeless Guys. If this episode hit home, please subscribe to our channel. Check out threehomelessguys.com for RSS feeds to your favorite streaming service. Follow us on social and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Drop us a review or shoot us a message at pod@threehomelessguys.com. We'd love to hear from you. Stay strong, and we'll catch you next time.